America special coverage starts right now.
From ABC News, live in Times Square, this is a special edition of Good Morning America, The Perfect Storm, with Robin Roberts and George Stephanopoulos.
And you are looking at the scene overnight in parts of New York City. Fires raging in the floodwaters. Dozens of homes destroyed, entire neighborhoods on fire. We have new pictures and information pouring in every minute right now. This storm has taken many lives, at least 16 so far. There is so much devastation.
And it really is remarkable when we're seeing these images more and more. And we know that 7.5 million people are out of power at this hour. The center of the storm, by the way, is over central Pennsylvania. And we just got this in. A levee in New Jersey was breached overnight. And we understand now an entire town is underwater. People are climbing on the roofs of their mobile homes, waiting for rescue. 1,000 people may be affected with that one.
That's right. We also have this big story in New York City this morning. So much of the city underwater overnight. Look at these pictures from one of the city's major highways. It is underwater right now. All but one of the tunnels into the city are closed. And officials say this is the worst disaster ever for the 108-year-old New York subway system.
And look at these pictures. Miles of Manhattan plunged into darkness overnight. There you see what's being called the largest storm-related power outage ever to hit the city. This is a live picture there of a dark Manhattan skyline, lower Manhattan.
A lot of cleanup to go right now. Our extreme weather team has been on the front lines of the storm from the very beginning. Sam leads off our coverage from Battery Park in lower Manhattan. Good morning, Sam.
And good morning. We are at the very tip of Manhattan. And last night, yesterday, this water that is the New York Harbor was all through this area. We could not stand here. This railing, the water was at the top of this railing. The water is down. But Sandy came on shore with everything a superstorm was expected to. That incredible surge, record-setting 14 feet of additional water into New York Harbor. Here's where that storm is right now, because it is not just a coastal storm, and it's certainly not just a New York storm. Look at that area of low pressure. That's what's left of Sandy, and it is spinning rain along the coastline and heavy snow inland. We will see tropical storm force winds at least throughout the day in just about every area that you're seeing that rain and snow. And again, Sandy affecting 1/3 of the country.
Sandy's effects blasted New York City, causing damage and destruction never seen before in America's largest city. A record high tide of nearly 14 feet at the Battery, 4 feet higher than the previous record, brought water gushing over Battery Park City in lower Manhattan. Over 4 feet of water flooded the century-old subway system, the Holland and Brooklyn Battery tunnels, and the site of the World Trade Center.
And what is your biggest concern at this hour?
Where it stops. That's the question, is where it stops and when it stops, and what damage it's doing in the meantime.
Unprecedented flooding caused backup generators to fail at several hospitals like NYU Medical Center, where hundreds of patients, including infants from the neonatal intensive care unit, had to be evacuated.
This is a infant. Yes, it is an infant.
We're still in Battery Park City, and we've gone as far north as we can. We are surrounded completely by water. The river, Hudson River, is that way. We tried to get out down south. Don't know how much water is here on West Street and Chambers, but cars haven't been able to get through.
Reportedly 100-mile-per-hour wind gusts on New York City bridges, and the city itself nearly 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts. The entire facade of this apartment building collapsed.
Oh my gosh, there's no wall for these apartments.
And here's a sight that brings fear to even the most jaded New Yorker. A construction crane collapsing atop a $1.5 billion luxury high-rise under construction, dangling above 57th Street. More than 200 firefighters battled through the night, a 6-alarm fire in the Breezy Point section of Queens that involved over 50 homes in a flooded area. Power is out in most of lower Manhattan, and the latest estimates have over 7 million people without power in 11 states. Officials say it could be up to 10 days before power is completely restored. Sandy's effects were felt as far west as Lake Michigan's 20-foot waves near Milwaukee, and at least 8 states have snow falling from North Carolina to Pennsylvania and into Ohio. Davis, West Virginia has 17 inches of snow, and there's much more to come. There could be 3 feet of snow in the higher elevations by Thursday.
And if you feel any part of Sandy right now, you will for another 2 days. Take a quick look at where the rain will fall, and we're looking at some very heavy rainfall, particularly inland areas. Watch those totals pop up, an additional 2 inches of heavy rain. This will mean some flooding for those areas that are in the yellow and also in the red. And the wind gusts. There'll be tropical storm force winds and even almost hurricane force wind gusts with this storm during the day today, well inland. Chris Cuomo joins me. Chris, we were out here all night long in this storm, trapped right here, couldn't go anywhere.
Could not get out of here. You know, we've been talking about expectations. There's the question of what you expect, and then there's what you can handle. The water came, the surge came. If we look at some of the pictures, though, of the effect that we just couldn't have imagined, this is the path train entrance. Do you see how the water is seeking its level? It's going down and the force increases. The battery tunnel became like a waterfall. So for all of the preparations and everything that people were preparing for, it happened as predicted. But it hit the city in more and worse ways than we could have ever prepared for. The city that never sleeps, now crippled, without power. Overnight, much of it underwater. The Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, a main entry point for the city, a gushing waterfall as Sandy's record surge poured into lower Manhattan for hours. The full moon tide bringing 5 feet of water in many places, up to 15 in the tunnels, blown by near hurricane force gusts that did their worst. Trees, power lines, torn and tossed. The liquid fist punched through the battery, making cars, boats, flooding ground zero. Then scenes like this began. One of the city's transformers buffeted by 90-mile-an-hour winds and salty water, an atomic-looking explosion. 670,000 in the city in darkness. Millions more suffered the same in surrounding areas. Brackish water stood 4 to 8 feet deep in the city's 7 main subway tunnels, shutting down almost all of the world's largest underground transit system.
We've got all our resources ready to clean this up and to get everything opened again.
Optimism tempered by the harshness of the task. People here could be without power for days. The subways could be quiet for weeks. The financial heart of the country barely beating as floodwaters surrounded Wall Street, closing the New York Stock Exchange again today. Officials are scrambling to find a way for trading to resume. We have found ourselves stuck on an island within an island. As darkness fell, Sandy's waters moved with deceptive quickness. Within an hour, raw sewage marooned many in the Battery area of Manhattan. Each path away now flooded with water and debris.
This is a lake.
We were stopped by a haunting image.
It's a sad symbol. We need to get that light back on, the Freedom Tower.
You know, there's something you can't see in the pictures and you can't hear in the sound, but many people are feeling here in the city, and we should talk about it. I haven't had a feeling like I had last night in this city since 9/11, that queasy sense of foreboding. I was trapped in the same place on 9/11 that we were last night. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, this morning when we woke up, the water was gone. And for all the power out and the property damage and the human loss that is still to come, this can be fixed. And when people wake up this morning in New York City and in the surrounding areas, they're going to know we're going to get through this. We've been through much worse.
And they should know there's already a team of people working to get it fixed for them this morning. We've seen them all around us. By the way, Sandy, that nor'easter with a hurricane in the center delivered on its title a superstorm with the lowest central pressure as it came on shore, 940 millibars, the lowest pressure of any storm we've ever seen in the Atlantic Basin. George?
Okay, guys, thank you. We're going to get more on the dramatic scene you mentioned. Ambulances lined up through the night after NYU Hospital here in Manhattan was plunged into darkness, its generators failing. Hundreds of patients have been evacuated to other facilities, 20 of them babies. And ABC's David Muir has been on the scene overnight. David?
Hey, George, you know, you talk about the resilience of New Yorkers and the work of heroes, and it's playing out still right now at this hour. You can see the long line of ambulances sort of circling the block here. One of the gurneys going by, that's a patient that's been taken out of the hospital. You can see there, Paul, if you pan over, one of the patients, one of the more than 200 that have been taken from the hospital overnight. And this is a rescue effort that continues to unfold at this hour. You can see the long line of ambulances here. As you mentioned, there were 20 babies from the neonatal intensive care unit that have been brought downstairs, and one of the things the fire department had to do was to bring in sleds, if you will, to carry them down the stairwells to bring them down. We do know that there were several patients who are critically ill, 40 to 45 of them that have been taken to area hospitals, and we're told that they're going to be cared for, obviously, once they arrive there. But as you can see, this line of ambulances, and there has been a line here since 10 o'clock last night when the generators failed. This is the hospital right up over my shoulder here. You can see it's completely dark. What they're trying to figure out is how so many of those generators could have failed, George. Big questions about how they get the fuel to those generators. But in the meantime, the work of heroes. I saw one patient who came out, a senior citizen who looked at me and saw me here and gave me a thumbs up, said, "I'm okay, George."
Boy, I've never seen a line of ambulances like that. Okay, David, thanks very much. Let's go to Josh now.
Staggering images, George, to see there. And we talked a lot about, and we've seen how Manhattan ravaged by Sandy. But this morning, so much of the story is, in fact, set in the outside of the island, in the outer boroughs. And that's where we're seeing now, again, as we take a look, Staten Island badly affected by flooding. One of the hardest hit areas here, particularly on the South Shore. Hundreds of reports of residents in at least 2 different neighborhoods being forced to head to rooftops of buildings to escape the rising floodwaters and there await emergency help. One local official there actually called this scene something out of a war zone. And again, information from Staten Island is only beginning to trickle in as the sun rises on the devastation. We're going to continue to update all of this as we learn more. There's also stuff to get to here in Queens, the Breezy Point area, actually the Rockaways, where residents have had to deal not just with the rain and wind, but as you see here, the fires. A 6-alarm fire overnight there. The New York Fire Department saving some 50 homes. They have been destroyed. So many, hundreds more, though, in the fire line. 200 firefighters battling this overnight. Overnight's been something very difficult to fight because of the winds, and the houses are so closely packed together. In fact, ABC News' Jim DeBril was on the scene of the fire in Queens, and this is what he described.
This is a community that lost the most people during 9/11, of firefighters and cops during 9/11. This community was hit horribly tonight. Many here expected that there would be flooding, there would be loss of power, but then this fire just erupted. We were in a home and the fire was literally right across from us. And as this fire just spread, we waded our way to another home and then realized that the parking lot that we were next to, the cars literally started to blow up. And again, the fire continued to spread. My understanding, it has spread across about 12 blocks of Breezy Point, an area that they call the Wedge. We thought we were just going to come here and see people that just didn't want to leave. Now they're being forced to leave, not by water, not by flood, not by Sandy, but by fire.
Again, devastation in Queens. You see here again the areas affected in greater New York. We want to, though, now, Amy, go back to Staten Island.
That's right. In fact, we have more dramatic scenes of devastation that are coming in right now. This one was just recorded. Extraordinary pictures of a large tanker ship washed up on the shores of Staten Island. This is a live look right there at what washed up in Staten Island. Look at that. WABC's Michelle Charlesworth has more on the story.
It looks like a war zone out here. Let's take a walk. This is a tanker. You were talking about this before, about a 200-foot long tanker. It's the John B. Cadell, and it has washed up. You know, we were talking for so many days. What does a 14-foot storm surge, a 20-foot storm surge do? We're on a street. This is Front Street in Staten Island, Clifton section, right on the Narrows. We can see Lower Manhattan from here. This is a tanker on the street that was just picked up and sat here as the water went out. We're about an hour and a half from high tide again, but it's just unbelievable. We came up on this, a couple of other people told us services knows about this, but this is a tanker on the street in Staten Island. Back to you.